Okay, so it being a little after 1:02, we're going to call this meeting to order due to technical difficulties. And I do not see Anita on here to do the roll. Deborah, do you mind doing the roll? Or do you want me to? I just go down the list.
No, I can do the roll call for you if you'd like. So the members of the board are yourself. We have Brent McElprane. We have Brent's here. Derek Knight.
Present.
Bill Dunn.
Present.
Sadie Lister.
Present.
Ray Martinez. Claudette Haverson.
Haverfield present.
Sorry, Haverfield. I do that to you all the time.
That's okay.
I apologize. And Tim Grandy. Director Torres.
I'm here.
Director Brierly.
Present.
And Director, well, it's not Director, I'm sorry, Mr. Crowder. And then I do believe that's everybody.
Okay.
Your advisor, Ms. Tatum, is not on today. She was on the other day, but she's not on at the moment. I don't believe, unless I just can't see her. Did I miss anybody? If I did, now's the chance to say so, please.
Okay, I think we at least got enough on the roll to make sure we have quorum to do whatever we need to do. So with that being said, we'll just keep a roll if the other people show up during our meeting. So the first item of business is the approval of the August 13, 2025 minutes. I will entertain a motion on those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Dunn. I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Mr. Dunn moves to accept the minutes. Mr. McElprague makes second. Any discussion on said minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous approval on the minutes. Okay, call for an additional subcommittee members. Deborah?
Yes, this was something that came up after you all had in the first meeting set, folks had volunteered for different committees. And one of the other members on the board had then later on said that they would like to serve on the committees, and that is Derek Knight. So we're going to call for that. I'm not sure how, I don't think it's a motion, but perhaps it is. We would have to ask our wonderful Miss Sarah Hicks from the AG's office if it needs to be a vote, because before it wasn't a vote, it was strictly just volunteers.
Good afternoon. I would say that if previously no action was taken, we just made a call for volunteers and those individuals were placed on the subcommittees, we should stay that course and just make another call for volunteers, and anybody interested can be placed on the respective subcommittee.
Okay, so with that being said, if somebody wants to volunteer, can we leave it on? Do we have to terminate the volunteer time, or can it be like a running open-end volunteer? So say somebody wants to, like, hey, I want to sit on this, or should we terminate it at some time? Because you don't want to get in and have people jumping from committees, correct?
Yeah, so I would say essentially what we want to do is create clarity and transparency about who specifically is on each subcommittee. And so I think it's at the discretion of the board members. It's a volunteer role. And so we just want to formalize that so it's clear who's on each subcommittee and who would be an acting or a voting member of that subcommittee. I think any member of the board can be present and listen in on any subcommittee meeting, but they wouldn't be asked to vote on the issues before the subcommittees. So we just want to formalize our list. And then at any time, if somebody who has volunteered for a subcommittee doesn't want to be on the subcommittee anymore, then I think they need to make that clear to the board so that their name is removed as one of the official voting members of that subcommittee.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Knight.
I would like to volunteer to sit on that finance committee.
Okay. So let's do this. Because this looks like an action item on the agenda, I'll make a formal acknowledgement to call for subcommittee members. With that being said, Derek, said what?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to volunteer to sit on the finance committee with the other committee members as well.
Okay, Mr. Knight wants to sit on the finance committee. Does anybody else want to have a particular committee they would like to sit on? Okay, hearing now, call for committee members is come to a close, and we'll just add you to the finance committee. Derek, all right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for serving. Okay, we're going to move on to item E, discussion of financial fiscal year 27 budget requests, the appropriations update. Deborah, do you want to take this one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just wanted you all to know that there has been work being done on behalf of the board to get the funds transferred from the land department to the new board fund codes. And that it looks like that will take place, in which case then Mr. Chair, you can call for another meeting and you all can update or change how much you will appropriate or award to the districts this year. But after doing some more checking at the last minute, I'm going to wait until like my own little whites of my eyes can see the money in the fund codes, and then I will bring it to you. I thought that I might be able to bring it at this meeting, but I can't yet. So, but I just want to let you all know it's being worked on, and I believe that you're going to get all of the money moved over, and you'll be able to award more to the districts.
Mr. Chair, this is Derek.
Mr. Knight?
So if I can ask a question to Deborah, so the money that we allocated or voted on last meeting that we just approved in the minutes is still allocated to the districts, correct?
Correct, but I believe you'll be able to allocate more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any discussion for Deborah on the appropriations?
I should speak up and say that when I say I believe you will be able to allocate more, it's that more money will be available, I believe, to your fund, to your funding code that you can then award out to the districts that is under a type 1 funding code, in which case it needs to be spent this fiscal year or else you'll be sending it back. And so that's why I was saying that you would have the opportunity to discuss that and decide if you want to, and then you can direct me to work with Central Services Bureau to pay that out. But, and I am working with Central Services Bureau to get everything ready for the districts to receive the amount that you already already voted on. So I'll bring it back to you, Mr. Chairman, so that you can call for a meeting when we get that update.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for this item? Hearing none, we'll move on. The funding groups and codes updates, Deborah?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to correct what I said in the previous meeting. I had different numbers in my head and I should have actually looked. So as I mentioned, there were 3 appropriations made to you, and those 3 appropriations were entered into the GAO system as 10,000, 11,000, and 12,000. And that 10,000 code was your $100,000 for operations. Your 11,000 was the funding from the 650,000 that went to your the conservation districts, and then the 12,000 was for the 250,000 for your watershed project, equaling your $1 million. Then your GAO funding code, there's two of them, and one of them is the and all of those are NRA, right? So then those are the three appropriations, NRA codes. Then your two GOA funding codes are NR 3199, which is all of your general fund monies that were appropriated, so 739,400. And then your GOA funding code NR 2274 is the 260,600 into your special plate funding code. So you'll always have those two actual funding codes that are distributing money under your direction. The appropriations were the other. So I had mixed up the code numbers when I reported earlier, and I just wanted to correct it for the record for you all and for the public.
Okay, I appreciate you finding that and correcting it for us. Anybody have any discussion on the codes? Okay, hearing none. Item C, the annual appropriation presentation.
I just simply wanted to put these numbers up. Can you guys see them when I click like that?
We don't see the numbers. We're still on the agenda.
You're still on the agenda. So I'm sorry. I'm not as used to Google Meets as the others. So let me, hang on, present something else.
I know earlier you were rolling through the screens pretty good, and we saw them at one point.
Hey, there they are. How's that? Is that
Yeah.
better?
1998 column on the left to 2024, 650,000, 30,000 columns.
Yes.
And then
so,
bar chart. Okay.
yes. So we went and did a lot of research, and so if I scroll all the way back, we were searched back all the way to 1986. It was the whole team that worked on this, and then kind of worked our way down so that you can see that the appropriations since 2006 have not changed for the conservation districts or the Ed Center. And I just wanted you all to know that because it was something that the Central Services Bureau said that we needed to point out in the budget request, and point out that there hadn't been an increase because other agencies and boards had been increased at approximately 1%, 2%, and 3% increments over the years, but the districts had not. And that this year, the governor's office had requested their agencies and so forth to only request a 2% increase if possible. And if not, then you need to explain why. And so Central Services Bureau said to tell you all that one of the things in your request should be to explain this and then chart it out. And so that's what we are working on right now. And I will be meeting with them again tomorrow to work on the final draft that gets submitted into the system. And so I just wanted to let you all know that that's why you have the option, that they believe that you have the option to request more than the 2% if you'd like, and just explain it and then show it in a chart. So before you discuss what kind of budget request you want to make, here's the reasoning behind why you're making more than the 2% that the governor has mentioned to all, has said to all of her agencies and boards. I didn't know if anyone had any questions for me, but that's just what I had to report.
Anybody have any questions for Deborah on any of this?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill.
Mr. Dunn?
If we were to, what's the present value of 650,000 at 2% per year? Do you know, Deborah?
No, I do not. I apologize. I was going more based off of recommendations from the Natural Resource Governor's Office and others that if you are going to make a request not to request more than 20,000 per conservation district, even though your appropriate or your legislation says that your statute says you can ask for up to 40,000 per conservation district, but because of the tight budget, et cetera, that just to take this in increments, if you were to use all of the money that was appropriated to you this year, it would be $15,000 per conservation district. And so if you wanted to make a request higher than that 15,000, it was suggested that the 20,000 would seem an appropriate one, not the full 40 per conservation district. But that is up to you all. You can ask for what you wish. You just direct me what to put into the request. And then ultimately the legislature and the governor makes their decision. So if I'm saying something wrong, I know that Ms. Sarah Hicks will correct me.
So, Mr. Chairman, what would,
Mr. Dunn,
at 20,000, how many, I can never remember, how many districts now are we funding?
You would be, the two districts that I know that do not want, that will be absorbed into other districts that are not functioning, if all of the tribal districts are able to provide their documentations from the tribes that they are functioning and that they have a bank account in their name, it's my understanding you would be funding 40 conservation districts in the next fiscal year.
Okay, that's easy to figure then, isn't it?
Yes, and which would mean if you did do a $20,000 request instead of 15, that would be $800,000.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And right now, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but just to follow up on what Mr. Dunn was asking, the conservation districts that sponsor an ed center in the statute, you can also ask for and it does have to be two separate requests, I found out. I thought that the board could just deal with the special license plate fund as they wanted based on the legislation reading that you can appropriate up to 5,000 per year, but you do have to request it. So it's two separate requests that Central Services is working with me on. And so one of them would be for the special plate fund. And if you did the appropriation, we have confirmed you have 29 districts that sponsor an ed center. And so that would be $145,000. So that would be a separate request from the other request of the 800,000 for the districts. And then of course your own board, you received 100,000 this year, and then that can be a request again for next year and pay all your bills. Or you can request more funds there too, but that's the one that it was suggested that you not ask for more out of that appropriation, and just it was recommended that you kind of stick with that 100,000 and see how the first year goes and how you get established and see how the funding is spent, and then make an appropriate request the next fiscal year. Instead of FY27, you'd make it for FY28, because then you would know, because right now as part of this request process, you have to go in and explain how you spent your money before you're asking for the new chunk of money. And we really don't have firm answers on everything right now. So it makes it difficult to indicate that you need more unless you're ready for it and ready to spend it all. So it was recommended that for your $100,000 for the board operations, just to leave it at that. And then it was recommended that if you did want to request more than $15,000 per conservation district, to do small increments of requests and go for 20,000. And then of course to ask for your $5,000 per ed center, sponsored ed center. That was just recommendations from Central Services and others, AGOA and others that I've been working with on trying to get all this together and in the system for you.
okay. Anybody else have anything for Deborah? Okay. Deborah, I can't pull up my agenda.
Sorry.
Deal. Could you please present it on the screen?
You betcha. Sorry about that. I am switching again. Like I said, I'm not as flipping as easily as I do with Teams. Hang on one second. There you go.
Perfect. So that was okay. So that was C and D. Do
They-
you have anything else that you want to talk about? The draft budget request presentation on D, Deborah?
No, just unless you want to just see it. Hang on one second. Sorry, I did have it up. There you go. And so that is, oh, I have FY 25, 26, but it's supposed to be 26, 27. It'll be 26, 27. But, and
Oh.
I found out that even though the districts speak this way, I mean, I know, and so I'm used to saying FY 25, 26. In reality, the state speaks as just FY 26. So when they're talking to me, they're saying, you're in FY 26. And so I had 25, 26 in there just because that's what I'm used to talking about, but it's actually what you're asking for is FY 27. It will start July 2026 for you. But those numbers are what they were recommending.
Okay.
But that's just their, it's just recommendations have been given to me. It's not, you guys can do as you wish.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this request of the budget presentation? Okay. Hearing none, moving down to the next item under legal advice. Ms. Hicks, did you have something in particular that you want to talk about on? Okay, well, let's just start with the executive session versus public discussion.
So I'll be brief. I actually just wanted to address some of the questions that came up at the last meeting. But to start, I just wanted to remind the board that you are the AG's client. And so at any time, if there's legal advice that you are seeking that you would like to preserve the confidential relationship that exists between the board and myself, we can go into an executive session at the vote of the members. We don't have to do that. It does have extra requirements involved. It would mean the exclusion of the public to maintain that confidentiality. So I think, typically speaking, to keep the flow of everything and to keep these board meetings moving, not every question posed to me needs to be done in an executive session. I just wanted to remind the board that that privilege does exist. And so at any time, if there's, if for any reason the board or a board member would like to maintain and preserve that confidentiality in seeking legal advice, you can always take that additional step. And that is well within your right. So I'm just going to proceed as if I am just providing advice openly. And I just wanted to make you aware that that is available. So at the last meeting, there were a few questions posed that I have done some research on, and I wanted to provide feedback. The first one related to sweeping of funds and whether monies appropriated or grants awarded to the board can be swept. And so the answer to that is that if the money is money that's been appropriated by the legislature to the board, then essentially at any time the legislature can make the decision to sweep that money back into the general fund. If the money has been received from a different source, like the federal government or through a grant or some other contribution, then that money cannot be swept by the legislature back into the general fund. It would be the board's money. And I also wanted to comment on the fact that in the statute, it says that the money does not lapse. So in theory, the money that isn't spent by the board could roll into the next year. I think the only risk there is that if there is a surplus of money, then the money that is appropriated by the legislature could essentially be swept back by the legislature because they might see that we're not using it or we haven't used all of it. And that would only be the money that they had appropriated to the board. Are there any questions on that?
Miss-
Deborah?
Yeah, this is Deborah, Miss Sarah. So the only question I have about that is I know you're saying that this, I take it the statute says that it's not, that it can be rolled over, but when they were establishing the funds from the appropriation, they told me that it was established as a type 1 and that it could not roll over. Only the 250,000 from the watershed project had been established as a type 3 that could stay in the fund until it was spent. I don't know. I mean, I can check on that some more from their end as to why they're interpreting it that way, but they told me that it had to be spent by the end of the year. All the type 1 money did.
Okay. And if they're telling you that, I think there's a large incentive for the board to try to utilize all of that money, especially as we get the lay of the land. But I would refer them to ARS 41-6014,
Okay.
which is basically, it outlines the Natural Resource Conservation District funds. And those funds do not lapse. So.
Okay. I'll talk to him because then maybe they need to change that designation inside of the system. I don't know. And then the other question was about,
Hold on, Deborah. Deborah,
oh.
can you hold off on that? Bill Dunn has a question. Mr. Dunn?
oh, sorry.
Yes, I guess my question is if the board gets appropriated, whatever, like the 650,000, once it's dispersed to the districts, can it be swept? Can those be swept back from the districts?
No, I believe that once the money that's been appropriated to the board has been distributed to the districts or designated to a specific project, it cannot be swept back by the legislature into the general fund. I think only if it's held in the board's main account, operating account, can the legislature then sweep the funds back.
Thank you.
Okay, Deborah, do you remember what your question was?
That was the question because that
Okay.
was the other tier to the whole sweeping thing.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, Ms. Hicks, you can continue.
Okay. At the last meeting, we had the proposition of the donation of tablets to the board members by the AACD, that the AACD would purchase the tablets and make the donation to the board so that essentially we didn't have to have paper copies of everything. So it looks like there's nothing specifically in the statutes that would allow the board to accept a donation of that type. However, there is language that does allow each district to accept donations. And so my advice to the board would be that AACD could make a donation of the tablet to the districts that have acting board members. So if you are the supervisor of a district and you are also acting in the role of a member of the board, then AACD could make a donation to the district of the tablet for use at the board meetings and for board business. With the exception of the 3 agency heads from Department of Ag, Game and Fish, and Forestry, they would not be able to accept the donations of the tablets. And so for those 3 individuals, AACD would need to essentially maintain possession of those tablets, and they could provide them for the benefit of those board members at the meetings, but they would not be able to accept donations in the same way that the district supervisors would be able to accept the donations as acting supervisors of their specific districts. So I think it's an option available if it's something that the board would be interested in utilizing. I just wanted to present that information for everybody's benefit. And just to refer you to the statutes that I'm discussing. So under the powers of the districts, it's 41-6054, item 11. The districts can apply for grants and accept donations, gifts, and contributions in money, services, material, or otherwise, and use or expend them in carrying out its operations. And then I didn't see anything with regards to the board as a whole that would allow them to essentially do the same thing in accepting the donation. So that's all I had on that point, if anybody has any questions.
This is Deborah. Is the three agency gentlemen, could they use their own laptops that they have through the agency if they want, and if they didn't want to mess with a tablet?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think the option of accessing material digitally, whether it's through your own device or through a tablet that's been provided to you, is always an option.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
I have a question.
Mr. Dunn,
These tablets, this would be a capital expense if we bought them for the members as far as the board. How much what it cost? $4,000 or $5,000 tops?
well, the issue is, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe the issue is that's not in the operation budget, but everybody that sits on this board needs to have something that separates their private email and contact information through this public service that we're doing. And the idea of having an individual tablet per that would be donated from AACD to the supervisor's district would be to make sure that there is a defined line of separating your private information from the information that you will be receiving from this board, along with not having to print out the paperwork. So, but as to the cost of the tablets, yeah, I'm sure you're right. It can't be a couple $1,000s. That would be something that the state association would come up with. Deborah, do you have anything to add on that?
I guess what I'm assuming, Bill, is you're asking, well, why doesn't the board just buy them? And I think that at this point, your budget might be a little too tight for that, because the better use, the way I understood all of the discussion from the board previously, the better use of any funds that you have available would be to get you all and the districts your own email systems, the Google Suites and everything, bring everyone up to that standard before buying the tablets, because the tablets, once they can be donated to the districts and used that way. And so it just an expense that maybe the board doesn't want to take on at this time. Doesn't mean in the future you guys wouldn't want to do something different when and if you have more funding in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brierly, you have your hand up. You have to unmute. Maybe I can. Nope, I can't unmute.
It's set up to where they unmute themselves.
Yeah. We're still not hearing you, Paul.
How about that?
There you are.
Okay, my phone was outsmarting me. Mr. Chair, thank you. I was just curious, I can't remember from the discussion last time, for us three in the agencies, do we need to keep the business of this board separate in some way? In other words, can we mix it with our agency laptops?
That would be, I'm going to let Ms. Hicks answer that one.
So I think that the intention of giving each board member a board email is the way that you create that distinction. I think that unless your agency has a restriction on the types of uses and activities for your work laptop, you could probably check your board email from your work laptop or pull up the digital packet for the meetings on your work laptop, but I would defer to your agency and the guidelines that are in place for your agency's equipment in terms of whether or not you would be permitted to do that. I think so long as there's a digital barrier, like the emails are coming to your board email rather than your agency email, I think that creates a clear line. But I can't speak to whether or not your agency would be okay with you using agency equipment for other business.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, when it's appropriate, I had a comment on a previous item that I lost signal during that discussion.
Okay. Was it something that Ms. Hicks was presenting, or was it back on the financial portion of it?
Yeah, back on the financials.
Okay, let's finish up with what Ms. Hicks is presenting. We only got one more item, and then we'll come back to that one.
You bet.
Thank you, Paul.
I wanted to make one last comment on the item of the laptops. I don't know, I would defer to the board and the districts in terms of whether or not this is something that, because they receive them as acting board members or as supervisors for their districts, if they would be returned once their term as a board member concludes and essentially reset or wiped of any information and redistributed to the next district board member, if that makes sense, or if they would become the possession of essentially at that time the district itself. It's just something that I thought of that I think the board should consider whether or not they would keep the iPads in perpetuity or if it would come back and be redistributed at the conclusion of your term as a member of the board. Okay, the last item I'm covering is public money. This is basically to discuss what money received by the districts is considered public money, and because the districts can accept donations and money can come from other sources, there was a question about whether that money would be considered public money. And so the way that it basically lays out is that if the money is within the control of the district, whether it's being used to fund projects or pay bills or pay administrators, if it's in the control of the district, it would be considered public money. So it would have to be tracked in the same way that other money that's appropriated to each district would be tracked. And it would have to have that level of transparency that's expected of a district, and the board could essentially audit those monies, and there would have to be an annual report of the use of those monies to the board at the end of each fiscal year. So if the money is donated to the district, if it's held within the district's control and in one of their bank accounts, then it's considered public money and it has to be treated as public money. And then to that end, there is a question about if these public monies could be invested, and there are some very specific criteria that have to be met in order for public monies to be invested safely. So there is an ability to invest the money. The treasurer has basically a fund where they do invest state money, and they receive a return on those investments. But as a whole, essentially the guideline is it can be placed in a savings account, it can be placed in a bond, or it can be invested through the treasurer's office in the same way that the treasurer operates that investment fund. And I believe, for example, Pima County, the district of Pima County uses the treasurer's model for their investment strategy. And I think that is also okay. So that's the gist of it. If you have any follow-up questions or if that brings up any additional questions, I'm happy to field those.
Does anybody have a question? Mr. Dunn?
Yes, I would ask that Sarah write an article for our districts to explain that, because I don't think that everyone around the state is aware of some of the restrictions on investing their funds. And if you need to, if you need a motion for that, I'll make it.
Well, let's hold off on the motion, but we can make a suggestion, but I don't think we want to do an motion right now. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything for Ms. Hicks on this?
Mr. Paul Brierly Director Brierly has his hand up.
Paul, do you have something on this, or did you want to talk about the financial stuff after we conclude this one?
Yeah, that's a remnant. I'll try to get it down.
Okay. Yeah, he wants to go back after we finish up with this legal advice item, Deborah.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I just had seen it pop back up, so I thought it
He
was.
doesn't know how to turn it off yet. He got it working now.
Got it. Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything on the public monies? Okay. No. Ms. Hicks, would that be an issue for you to draft some kind of information sheet that we can hand out to the districts on correct direction on how to invest their monies?
I have no problem putting something together. I think that it does raise an important distinction that I should reiterate to the board, which is that I am providing advice to the board, not to the district specifically. So I am happy to create something that helps guide the board and make the board knowledgeable about what the districts are allowed to do with the funds appropriated to them. I would be more hesitant for that to be something necessarily that's broadly distributed to the districts, because that feels like I'm providing them with legal advice or feedback. Does that make sense? I guess how about I create it and I provide it to the board, and at the next meeting, I will have clear feedback about whether or not it's something that should be necessarily distributed to each of the districts that aren't board members.
Okay.
Does that okay?
Yeah. Deborah, did you have something you wanted to add? Or
Well, I was just going to ask, is it okay if the board, since the board has requested this information and you've drafted something for the board, then is it okay for the board to put it in as part of their packets of information on how to run a board correctly, legally, and the way they wish them to be, administered? It can just go into that packet. It doesn't have to come directly from you then. It's information they gathered. Is that okay?
I think that's a good solution. Essentially, it's kind of like the PowerPoint presentations I've done. It's all part of the board's packet and it's available to the public. And so if any member, a district supervisor or a member of the public wants to see what feedback I'm giving to the board, it would be available to them to look at and review.
Perfect. That helps. That helps my job. So thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
all right, thank you. With that, does anybody else have anything for Ms. Hicks before we move on over any of the legal advice items? Hearing none. Okay, we're going to return back to Mr. Brierly. He had a question back in item E that we need to follow up on to answer for him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to make a comment. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think it's going to be a tough budget year, and if we try to go over the 2% suggestion, another option is to have our friends at the legislature run something or support that. I thought I'd throw it out there that I don't know how successful we'll be trying to get more than 2% the governor's budget process, but we do have some friends at the legislature, as we heard at the AACD meeting. So just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Smith.
can I just do a follow-up then with Director Byerly and the board? Yes, we do have a lot of support, and when it comes to your project funds area, I was told that by lots of legislators that they would love to work with the board on any projects you all might have that you want to point to, and some budgets, and come up and do a budget request through that path, and they would put the money into your project fund code rather than into the straight operations. So you're absolutely right. That is definitely a path to go.
Okay. With that being said, let's just jump into the next item, G, considering an action to approve, which is a budget request. So with our previous discussions under item E and what Mr. Byerly has suggested about contacting legislatures for a push on our request in the budget this next year, does anybody want to start this off? So I guess the thing would be, Deborah, will you pull up your fiscal year 25, 26 or 26 budget request that you had drawn up on your sheet?
Yes, sir. And like I said, I don't have the dates correct. I was using a draft from the
Right.
last one.
Okay. So as kind of through our previous discussion, this amount would be at 20,000, would be higher than what we approved the other day for the conservation districts. The ed centers would be the same, or is that the same, Deborah?
It's $30,000 less because of that 30,000 that's hanging out there that is requested to be appropriated directly from your budget. And so the central services were saying, since you're a new board and we can clean that up. And from now on, you just create your appropriation, and then you, for the, what you want to pass through, basically what you want to award or to give to the districts. And that can include funding for education. And then the districts can move it to their ed centers as needed. And rather than call out a specific $30,000, and then you clean up that request and then actually ask in the appropriation for a request of the up to $5,000, like your statute says, and get that to the sponsored ed centers out of the fund. Because as we mentioned before, that fund needs to needs a chance to build up. And so now in the end, the governor's office and the legislature, the actual budget that comes back and whatever you're appropriated, it may be that they use every side of that special plate fund to fund your total request. You're just requesting it based on the availability of general funds and the license plate fund, and then they will go from there. So you could ask for the $260,600 that has been given out of the appropriated out of the special plate fund for the last, I don't remember how many years now. You can do that again instead of the 145 if you want, and then lower your request from the general fund. You could do that. You can basically do anything you want for appropriation requests under the general fund and under your license plate fund. Now, if the money's not in the license plate fund, you just have to wait for it to backfill to the appropriation. But right now, annually, you're getting approximately $280,000 a year in the license plate fund. And I don't know the full amounts on that yet. I haven't gotten access to it yet, but once I do, I'll be able to give you how much, because they're in the process of having ADOT move the money over to you all. And so once we get the quarterly reports, I'll be able to report to you all how much comes into that fund as well. So you're kind of operating a little bit blind on how much to ask for and from which fund, because you can base it on what's been done for the last 20 years, or you can try a little something new and try to get support from the governor's office and from the legislature, however you want to do it.
I'll entertain a motion if anybody wants to make one.
Mr. Chair, this is Bill.
Yes, Mr. Dunn.
I move that we request 800,000 for the appropriation for the conservation districts. And I don't know what to do about the ed centers.
Well, it would come out of that 800.
I don't think so.
Yep, correct. It
Yep.
comes out of the license plate fund.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's how you put your request in, because right now Central Services is having me put together 2 requests for you. And one is from the general fund and one is from the license plate fund. And so in the past, basically as much, the average that has been put into that fund is what's been requested out of that fund. So you've been having this, 260,600 asked for, for over a decade. And so you could continue that request and then lower how much you're requesting out of the straight general fund. And no matter what, you're going to have to ask for your $100,000 for operations. So
Okay. Did that help you with your motion, Bill?
Yeah, 800, move to ask for 800,000 for the districts and $100,000 for operations. And well, I hadn't figured I still haven't figured the ed centers yet. Well, I looked up the present value of 650,000 since 2006. It's $1,041,573. So that's a reasonable request, I think. 800,000. Now, Deborah, you're saying that the 800,000 includes a cut for the ed centers?
no, that would be a separate request.
okay,
That's why it's
okay,
separate
all
off
right,
that line.
okay,
Yeah, I've got
okay.
it. 28 sponsored ed centers at $5,000 is 145,000.
Okay, okay.
I guess the thing to look at for you all would be that if you asked for the 800,000 for the districts and 100,000 for the operations of your board, you're looking at $900,000. That's a $900,000 request from the general fund, right? And this year they gave you $739,400, and that included your watershed project, but
Okay.
and typically they give you 650,000. So
Yeah, well, that 250, that can't, that wouldn't come from the board, would it? It would come from a district or a group of districts?
If somebody made a request to the legislature, yeah, so some
Yeah.
districts are working directly with legislatures asking for money to be put into that fund, and that's their prerogative. But the board can also speak to the legislature and try to get some funding into that fund as well, I believe, or maybe it has to come strictly from the districts. That would be a question for Ms. Hicks.
Excellent question.
But it's not something you ask for here. I do know that. Like you don't ask for a project funding in this budget request right now. This one's strictly for this stuff here. It's not for a project.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Okay. Just hang on a second. So that 145,000 divided by 20 is only $7,250 per ed center.
28 ed centers.
It's sponsored. Remember, the language is sponsored, not number of ed centers.
What's the difference?
So some ed centers have more than one district that sponsor them, and so they receive that $5,000. I guess the math is off. I apologize. Like I said, always check it. 140,000. 28 times 5,000 is 140,000. My apologies.
28 times 5,000. Okay.
Is 140, not 145.
Okay. And $5,000 gives them the ability to do exactly nothing.
I understand that, but that's what your statute reads. If you go and look at the statute for the Environmental Plate Fund, it says you can appropriate up to $5,000. That's it. And we can work on getting that
Well-
statute changed.
Well, the limit that we can ask for is 60,000 per.
That's different. That's money from the general fund. That's not the plate fund. That would be just like you asking for the
Right,
district
of course.
for
Well, aren't we asking for both right now? It's gonna be appropriated.
It's up to you as the board if you want to ask for more than just the money to fund the districts and more than just the 5,000 for the ed centers. If you want to ask more for the ed centers, then that's going to increase your ask. And as pointed out, you're not supposed to be asking, it's been requested that you ask for no more than 2% of an increase. So it depends on the board's focus at the moment.
And do we have to make this motion today?
Yes, tomorrow I have to finish the submittal with Central Services. And then on Thursday, I have to deliver I'm supposed to be working on printing all the books and everything and getting them delivered by Friday. But I intend to deliver them Thursday because just so that I am not, sleepless on Thursday night.
Okay, so I guess my question then is, why isn't that that our other ed center appropriation in this request right now? Am I missing something? Obviously I am.
Yeah, it can be. So like if you get the $800,000 for the 40 active conservation districts, you can tell those districts, oh, by the way, we're going to take $30,000 out of that and use it for the ed centers, and the rest will go to the districts, and we're going to decrease how much the districts are getting. But you got to remember, not all districts have ed centers.
Yeah, I understand that, but
But if you request the funding for the 40 active conservation districts, they can then determine how much they want to put out of their budget towards education and pass it. And then in the meantime, the special license plate funding is specific up to $5,000 for each ed center. So that money can be appropriated in any way you want. That money can be granted or I can't remember the exact language, but that money can be awarded to each conservation district. After you get it, you can award it as you decide. But right now you're saying that you want to ask for a certain amount of money from the general fund for what you're supposed to be doing by, via statute. And so what has happened in the past over the decade or even more is that the 650,000 was asked for out of the general fund, 260,600 was asked out of the special plate fund. The money was put together and then distributed as $5,000 per ed center through the special plate fund, 1,250 through their line item request, so to speak, their fund request, and then the 12,980 was given to the conservation districts.
Deb, can I interject really quick?
Yes.
Because I think I had a little bit of confusion too, but I think maybe I understand now. So there was essentially an appropriation made to the board for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
And even though the statute allows the board to make a budget request well beyond what has historically been appropriated to the board, we're trying to kind of keep within those historical limits. So for example, under the statute, the board is allowed to request $40,000 for each district, an additional $60,000 for each ed center under the general appropriation. And then under a separate budget request, they're able to request up to $5,000 from the special plate fund for the education centers. But so that's a lot of money. But what we're really just asking, or we're trying to hone in on today, is how much this board is going to ask for this next fiscal year. And we're trying to stay within some of those historical constraints. And so we're asking for essentially $20,000 for each conservation district, and then the additional $5,000 for each active sponsored education center. Is that what is
Yes.
being proposed in your
Yes.
budget proposal?
Plus
Okay.
the $100,000 for the board operations, which also adds to your overall request. And so so what Bill's like, well, wait a minute, what about the money for the ed centers? And what I'm trying to say carefully and in a friendly way is that right now the board's focus is on getting the districts on their feet and getting them aligned with all of their statutory responsibilities. And they don't have enough funding to do that. And so if you're going to ask for an increase, especially during a period when increases are not favorable, the focus of this board is the districts. And then the ed centers they have a special pot of money that you literally can ask specifically for funding to support those ed centers. And then, work your way up. This is the first year that you're even able to request anything. Like I said, it's been 20 years. But at the same time, you're being told, hey, you can't ask for much. Because if you were to get the $40,000 per district, that would be $1.6 million. If you were to get $60,000 per ed center, that'd be $1.4,400,000. And then the license plate fund, which is the other one, is $140,000. Well, you're nowhere near historical averages of that. And so if you want to make a reasonable request this year, plus have money to operate the board, because that hasn't been in the request previously either. That's why it was suggested that if this year you have the 15,000, you've got the $5,000 for the ed centers, and you got the $100,000 for this, then maybe if you want to try for $20,000 per district, go ahead. If not, if you want to just play it safe, you just ask for the same appropriation plus the 2%. And on $739,400, the 2% would be $14,788. So, or you, yeah, no, thank you, Sarah. I was speaking as carefully as I could.
Yes, Mr. Dunn.
Deborah, I guess my confusion is always before, we had two lines in our appropriation, one for the districts, one for the ed centers, and then a separate one for the license plate. Is that not right?
The
That's where I'm getting-
appropriations, yeah. So the appropriations, where it matters is where it came from. And so you always were being funded by two funds. One was the general fund and one was from the special plate fund. And what they were doing was they were saying, oh, the districts can have $30,000 out of what we're, giving, or, so just like this year, remember how you saw your budget and it said, oh, $30,000 out of the money, out of the $1 million that went to the board to spend, 30,000 of it must go to the ed centers, which equals $1,250 for each ed center. So that was the appropriation. The actual ed center money out of the special plate fund actually didn't have a written appropriation. It was just coming from the license plate. A chunk of money was coming from the license plate fund and put into the budget that was being used. And it was just being utilized for the districts and the ed centers the best way possible, and that's why the districts went from, as the fund reduced, then the amount given to the districts was reduced, because in keeping up with that language of up to $5,000 from the special plate fund, you had that. And then the $1,250, because that was appropriated. If you saw your appropriation, it didn't say anything about the $5,000 from the special plate fund. The only thing that your appropriation said this year for ed centers was strictly $30,000. So that's the only thing that you were directed by appropriations that you have to give to the districts out of the $1 million that you were given. You have to give them that 30,000. So this is a budget request. It's not the actual appropriation. They may come back and write the appropriation any way they want, and they may give you the same amount of money, and then they may still tack on that, oh, you must appropriate $30,000 to the ed centers. But then it's up to the board if they don't want to give that up to $5,000 per ed center from the special plate fund, because the special plate fund money had been given to the overall budget of the districts, with only the $30,000 appropriated for the ed centers, which is only $1,250, which we know is not enough to do anything. And but now you're allowed to ask for however much money you want from both funds, but with the caveat that the governor said, hey, it's a tight budget, and we request all of these folks to only ask for a 2% increase at most. But if you look at other agencies and boards over the last 20 years, they've been given incremental increases, and you all have not, which is why they were saying, well, you do have an argument for why you could ask for a little bit, why you could ask for more than 2%, but that this is not the year to try to get 40,000 for each district and 60,000 for each ed center. When the fund there is a specific fund for them, which is the license plate, and ask for up to 5,000 for that. So put your district hat on for a second and think about, your budget and the difference between 12,980 to 15, if you all manage to get and just that to 20. So you're trying to help the districts fulfill their statutory requirements. And then any other funds that you manage to have or get, they can focus them on their education if they want. The other thing to remember is that not all districts have ed centers, and you don't want to leave districts out of funding possibilities for education. It's part of their statutory requirement as well, right? Is for education. So if you take a large chunk from your budget and give it strictly to ed centers, there's quite a few districts that you've left out of getting any funding.
Mr. Torres has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just wanted to try to understand the math here. So if we ask for a 2% increase, what would that number be?
Well, the 2% increase cannot be asked of the license plate fund because that's based on what they've got. So that 260,600, we would have to just basically stick to that request. And then the rest of what you want to the rest that you want to request would have to come from the general fund. So this year, the general fund gave you 739,400 from the general fund, but 250,000 of that was for a special project. So it depends upon how you want to look at that special project. If you want to look, yeah, do you see what I mean? So if you want to look at, well, general fund was 739,400, you could take 2% and request from there, or you have to take it from you have to take out that 250,000 from the 739,400, which leaves you 489,400, and that would be your 2% request then, right? Which is nothing. So, but if you take 2% of 739,400 and you're saying that's what we're requesting from the general fund, that would leave you with a request of 14,788 as the 2%, right? So that's 739,400 plus 14,788, which leaves you with a general fund request of 754,188 plus your 260,600 from the license plate fund.
Thank you. That to me, I'm just thinking that as sort of the lower limit, and then
Yes.
anything of that is needing to be justified.
Yes, sir. Which is why I was told by Central Services that the justification, and that's why they were helping me and the team put together like a graph and everything, and the spreadsheet of all the information of the past years, is to show that there have been no increases in 20 years, in 2 decades.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
So,
Mr. Dunn.
so on your notes over here, you've got 945,000. I'm having trouble here figuring this out because I don't know I understand 800,000, but then you got 145,000 for the ed centers.
That should be 140,000. That should be 140,000.
Or what? Okay,
The reason why
that's fine.
Yeah, and the reason why it's not on the left-hand side is because that is not a request from the general fund. The stuff on the left-hand side is just your general.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough.
that's
So
why I had that note. I just didn't want to leave the ed centers out, and just so that you all knew that, yes, we're trying to get them their $5,000, of course, from the special plate fund. And if you want to add another 30,000 in there, you can, just like that they've been doing, which is the 1,250. You could do that. You could do whatever you want once you have the money, but you have to justify it inside the budget, right? And so what I'm being told is right now is not a time to ask for increases, and you certainly wouldn't want to do it for ed centers when most of them are nonprofits. And so the statement is, hey, your justification isn't about you're trying to get money for nonprofits. Your justification is you're trying to get money for your districts, and then the districts can deal with their education as they want. If they want to, if they want to give it to their ed center and let the ed center deal with it, that's great. If they want to do it themselves, that's great. Plus, that way you're not singling out districts that do not have education centers.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about asking for this 140,000. That's right now.
No, we do. We have to ask for the money out of the special plate fund as well as the general fund. There's 2 actual requests being done. And so you can say that you want 260,600 from the license plate fund like you always have. Like it's like that, that's been being done for quite some time, right? And that's because that's what was needed to fund the districts and the ed centers for as much as they could get done.
So the districts were historically receiving $260,000 out of the license plate fund, and that would reduce the amount requested from the general fund in previous years.
Yes, because the general fund request had to be reduced.
Okay. So in all reality, yeah, it'd probably be best to take that one graph off. If your target point is 2 numbers, first number is being 800,000 and second number being 140,000, and you take the license plate fund of 260,000, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you take 260,000 and you take away the 140,000 because that's a 5,000 maximum request for the ed centers. That leaves us with 120,000 and 600.
Yeah.
And then you take that 120,600 out of the general fund and reduce the 800 by that is 679,400. And then we have to add another 100,000 for operations.
Right.
And then that could be a reduced amount request from the general fund, and then have as much as we can allocate to the ed centers through the special plate fund. And then it would increase the amount of money that the conservation districts would have been historically annually receiving. And in which case they could support their conservation districts at a higher level.
Yes. But
We need a whiteboard for that one.
well, that's what we were supposed to work on during the committee meeting, but it didn't.
Right.
We didn't.
Well,
So now you all get to work on it.
yeah.
Do you want me to pull up a blank spreadsheet and you guys?
Yeah, do that right quick, please, because I think it'd be a little bit
Sure.
easier if we could all see. Mr. Torres likes the idea of a blank spreadsheet too.
Don't we all? All right, blank spreadsheet. Tell me what you guys want me to say up here. Here's your general fund request. And
Okay.
here's your special plate fund request. And so, out of the general fund, you need your $100,000 for sure. And
Right.
out of the special plate fund, you could ask for the 260,600 like they've been doing and use it for whatever you need it for, as it's been being done for many, many years.
What
Or
if we don't use the 260,000? Where does it go if we don't ask for it?
it stays in the fund and the fund builds up which these, if you look at the legislation for that fund, it says that, which is what I was trying to explain last time, is that the actual legislation says that that money should only be used for education, districts that sponsor education centers. And then, but due to budget cuts and everything else over the years, they've been having to use the fund to also support districts, which is great because the districts needed money to survive. And so, because the general fund budget had been reduced. And so, you could just ask for the 140,000 out of here if you want to, and let that fund build up. And then ask for 900,000 out of the general fund if you want. But then you're increasing that general fund request, because this year the general fund request was 739,000, right? Your appropriation.
With the 100,000 for operations and the 250,000 for the project.
Well, yes, it had the 250,000, which is what's muddying the waters in the
Right.
number for you. If it weren't for that, then yes, you could probably see it a little clearer. And this was the special environmental special plate fund. Sorry. And that was 260, 600. So that was what was appropriated this year. And this was the general fund. And so out of this, though, as you've seen in my other spreadsheets, you had the 250,000 come out. Well, it should be minus. And you had your 100,000 come out. So that left you with that much for the districts. But you received the 260,600. Oh, plus you had your $30,000 appropriation that said it had to go to the ed centers. So there's your 30,000 out. So that's really what you were left with this year for the conservation districts. But if you follow the statute attached to the environmental special plate fund, it says you can ask for up to $5,000 to be appropriated per sponsored ed center, which should be $140,000. But they gave you the 260,600. So once you take out your 140, that left you with $120,600 that you were able to then use if you want for the districts. Boom. And right now you've got 31 districts. But that number is going to go up. That gives your districts 15,483.87 if you want this year. So if you take this 250 out, and then you're trying to increase to 20,000, that's why it looks like such a huge jump. If you take your 739,400 and add just the 2%, you're only adding, it's 15,000, it's 14,788 would be a 2% increase if you were taking it out of this, if you were saying you wanted 2% increase out of the general fund of 739,400.
Okay. Brent, what did you have? You had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deborah, didn't you say earlier that the special plate fund is going to be reverted to the board now from here on out, or?
Yes.
And that's all the special plate funding?
At the moment, 260,600 was appropriated, because remember, you still have to make the request
Right.
for it to be appropriated. So, but I was told there's 280,830 some odd dollars in it. So they're going to transfer it all to you, and then you just let it build slowly up again over the year. And that's why that you kind of have to take an average appropriation, which is what that other spreadsheet showed, which is that the appropriation is based off of an average. Let me show you one more. I'll show you another spreadsheet. I was trying not to do this because I didn't want to like get everyone. Oh wait, cancel. All right, hold on. So here's the spreadsheet that shows all the way back all of the amounts appropriated in lump sums to the, to the districts and where the money came from and everything like that. And it's a little bit hard to follow, but basically this 260,600 from the Environmental Special Plate Fund has been occurring for many, many years because the amount that was going into the Special Plate Fund dropped back in 2008. And so that's why in some years, the ed centers were not receiving as much. And then the ed center, the Environmental Special Plate Fund, when it was created in statute, it says in there that the money that comes off this plate sits in there and can grow. It doesn't have to be used every year. And since the statute also said you could only ask for up to $5,000, that's all that was being eaten out of it. So what happened was back here in 2000, let's say, there was $905,000 in that fund. So what happened was, since it wasn't being eaten up as much, and then budgets got tight and everyone started getting cut, they had, and people just weren't buying the plate as much, they had to start taking money out of that to help support the conservation districts as well as the ed centers. And that's, that was needed. That was a necessary thing. And here's when it was established, 1997, back here. And that's what was in it then. So it's gone up and down and up and down, up and down. And now this average is what's been appropriated to help take care of the districts.
Brent, do you have something else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. To me, it makes sense or to be cautious on this special plate fund and just ask for the 140,000 out of the special plate fund, and then our other requests will be out of the general fund.
You can certainly do that. It's but just that you all know, they can come back and say to you, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to appropriate everything out of the plate fund first and then backfill with the general fund. So that is what's been happening, right? And so that may continue to happen, but yes, that is the point of the Environmental Special Plate Fund. And so you're right. The point is to let it grow and then be appropriated to the ed centers.
Well, that makes the most sense to me personally, but that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anybody have anything else? Does anybody want to make a motion for direction of what to request?
Did Mr. Dunn's motion go die, or I'm not sure what his motion was, to be honest. So
we ended up just hashing it out. So
okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure.
what I was trying to do was get him to make a motion, and then we hash it out and go back and correct it. But it just
Gotcha. That's fine.
You
No,
know,
I just need to
gotcha.
know, someone's taking the notes for me, the minutes for me, and I just wanted to make sure they knew, and so did I, what you wanted.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, I guess that my
Mr.
motion
Dunn.
is to request 800,000 for the districts, 100,000 for the board, and our what is it, 20,000 per sponsored ed center.
5,000. You're allowed to ask for up to 5,000.
Okay, 5,000. We're allowed to ask for up to 5,000 out of that special plate fund.
Yes, and the districts can work with their legislators to change that statutory language. If you can remember, Senator Dunn, who was Representative Dunn at the time, was wanting to raise it to $10,000. And then he found out that there just wasn't any money in this special plate fund because there just weren't that many plates selling. And so then the idea that the districts brought forward was, let's change the plate and get people to buy it. But the statute reads you can't change it. So, but the statute we can request that the legislature change the statute. And as Director Brierly pointed out, you guys have friends in the legislature, and the districts might be able to work with them to get that language changed. So that in the future, if you can get the fund built up, you'd be able to give the districts more out of that fund. And in the future, you might be lucky enough to work your way up to getting a full request in for the districts. And then even further in the future, you might be able to work your way up to getting a full request for the ed centers. But it's not going to happen right away because there's no money, and everyone's been told not to ask for a bunch of money. So that's why the suggestion was, well, you might be able to get away with this if you can just kind of give an argument and show that there's been no increases for 20 years. But if you guys don't want to do that and you want to play it safe and just go to the legislature and ask for funding to come into the project fund, right? Like Director Brierly was suggesting, then you can go that route too and just ask for an increase of 14,788.
Okay. So Mr. Dunn has a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. McElspring seconds that motion for discussion. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to discuss on this? Does everybody understand what the motion is? Like, if you look at the screen, the highlighted numbers on the left-hand side, those are what our budgetary requests are. And to be said that those can be are just our requests. They can be changed at moving forward in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, this is just a request, and the governor's office and the legislature, everyone, it can be changed. As you know, they're the ones that decide on the final budget. And I think what Director Brierly was saying was as well, and maybe even Director Torres, I'm not sure, but I think you could just request the 260,600 out of the special plate fund if you wanted, and reduce your amount that you're requesting over here by the difference. Let's see. So that would be a less 120,600.
Yeah, there's another zero in there.
Oh, sorry. 120,600. This is why I use Excel. I never try to do my own math. Trust me. All right. Let's see. And then you do this. Boom. Oh, whoops. Didn't go as minus. 120,600. Come on. And so then your request is this amount, right? And which isn't far off from last year's, which was 739,400 out of the general fund, which means you would only be asking for an increase in $40,000. So you could do that, which I'd love to hear from Director Torres and Director Brierly on what they think of that as an option, because they have experience in fighting for increases.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Paul.
if I understand that correctly, that is greater than a 2% increase because the 2% would be 14 something.
Yeah, this is your 2% over here. The 14,788 is 2% of your 739,400 because you can't ask for a 2% increase on the environmental special plate fund. What's in it is what's in it. And so you can't ask for any extra on that. But if you asked for a 2% increase on your appropriation from the general fund, it's 14,788.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we ought to stay within the 2%, except for any exceptional things. And my thought, again, this is a request, I can say no. My thought would be that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 100,000 operational expenses is kind of a new thing, right? So I don't know that we have to have that figured into what our 2% increase is. I guess my thinking would be just stick with the 2%, but then add in the 100,000 because that's a new thing that we need because of this board being put in place. If that makes sense.
Well, previously out of the funds that they were getting, the 650,000 for the districts, 80, I believe it was around 80,000 was kept for administration within the land department's budget. So, I mean, there were some funds, but they just weren't called out because it was just part of the overall budget. Because, you know, no matter what, you have to have somebody running things. But yes, there has been. It's called out now as administration.
Okay, I'm just thinking as far as negotiating with the Office of Strategic Planning and Budget, if we could somehow show that we're increasing, that we're sticking to their 2% limit, and then if we're not overall sticking to that 2%, show something that is new or different is why it's higher than the 2%.
I would say that then the budget justification would say that we are now supporting the tribal soil and water conservation districts, and we never have before. So there's funding needed for them. That would be the justification there, I would think.
That and if there's any additional expense because of this board being new,
Right.
and the administrative services we need to do for that. If we can package those sort of separate and then show we've got that as an increase, and then we have 2% over what we had in the past year as an increase. I think that's, Director Torres might want to weigh in, but that's how I would frame it, or I think that would be the most likely to get through if we frame it that way.
Mr. Torres?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think that's good rationale that we could, I think we could be successful in that. You know, the bottom line is if you add the two numbers from last year, it's about $1 million. And then the amount of money that we're asking for this year is $1,040,000. That's not too big of a difference. I think the biggest difference there is that $250,000 watershed project that we're now going to be allocating towards funding for the district. So I think everything Paul laid out makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Anybody else? So with what Paul was talking about, do we need to amend the motion, change the numbers? Because we would be increasing the special plate fund and reducing the amount request from the general fund. Or
Yes, if you want to request the 260,600, then
okay, so
yes, the answer would be yes, you need to change that.
okay, let's just vote this one down and start over again. So we need to vote this down so we can start over again by changing the numbers. So all those in favor of, is that correct? Is that the best way to do that?
I don't think that's right. Well,
Okay.
you could because nobody's amended it.
Yeah, you could amend it unless you want to make a motion to amend it, and then we go through that process. Do you want to amend the bill, change the numbers? I think that'd be safer.
Well, I would if I understood it, but
Would you like to amend your original motion to increase the special plate fund and to reduce the general fund request
By the same number?
by the numbers that we have presented today?
That's what I don't understand. If the total amount is still 900,000, yes, but
Okay, so that's,
is it, Deborah?
Yes, what Director Briley was saying was, is we can package it a certain way that we're only asking the 2% increase on the regular amount that we got last year, and then package why we're asking for that other special increase, which would be because the tribal districts are now coming on board.
It's easy to justify. I mean, you do it with have your brain tied behind your back.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brierly.
Yeah, and just a caution, it's easy for us to justify it, but every other agency and every other board is justifying their request too. So it is hard to get more than they want. So, and to clarify, yeah, I think that we should be increasing our general fund by the 14,788, our general fund request, so that we can show that we're, acting in good faith and asking for 2% increase. And then our other, like the 100,000 or something could be, whatever we want to say with the tribal and whatnot, could be special other increases. But I'd like to see that our basic ask is the 2% increase. And I don't necessarily want to do it by pulling more money from the license plate fund. In other words, I kind of want to put it on them to have to provide for these things and leave that as sort of a last ditch option. I don't know that I want to lessen the blow on the general fund by pulling more out of our special plate fund. Wasn't what I was suggesting. I just would like to see that somehow when OSPB looks at it, they can see that we are requesting a 2% increase and then a sort of a special line for other things that have been added this year that we can justify it that way, but they can see that we're basically acting in good faith on their 2% request.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Claudette, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, if we do the 2%, so that would make the general fund 754,180. And then add our 100,000 for our operations. And that would equal like 854,180. And then the 140,000 for the ed centers, that would keep us under $1 million. That would be 994,180. Would that be more in line with them? Because that's the 2%. That's what I figured. So we'll have to play with numbers, Deb.
That's if you are including, oh, sorry, that is the 2%. That is if you're including the watershed monies in the general fund request, which we have been doing in this discussion, which I believe is fine. I believe that's okay. So this would be the amount that would be requested this time, the 754,188.
Right.
And that would be the general fund request. And then, but what I'm not sure what you all are saying you want to do is, do you want to ask for the 260,600 here? Or do you want to only ask for 140? That's the part I'm confused on. I do know that Director Brierly just said he thought it would, be better to ask for the 140, right?
Right.
That's what I did with the numbers.
Okay. All right. So then the special request would be a third request you would be putting in that would say, hey, we need this money for these reasons because we now have tribal districts to support, et cetera.
Exactly. So what kind of a number are we talking about for that?
Let's see. So we would have to take the 754,188. We'd subtract out your 100. And then we would have, so what's left of that,
That's 654, 188.
right? 188.
Okay.
And you need 800,000. So if you need your 800, right? And
So that's another 145,812.
yep. And we have 10 more. We have 2 new, or 20 or 10 more new tribal districts. And if we're trying to reach 20,000 per district, that would be 200,000. We're actually asking for less than what, what we would need to ask for. So I think the 145,812 is not a hard ask. I mean, I think it, in other words, I don't think it's hard to come up with a justification for it, is what I'm trying to say. Or you use the full 260,600, and then your request is reduced. You're only going to ask for $40,000 of an increase, which I don't know. Let me see what's that percent. So 7. Well, that is a high increase of percent. If you're looking at it by percent, it is a high increase. So I'm always just looking at broad numbers, like what's $40,000 out of all the millions that the state spends. But yeah, if you're trying to do the good faith on the agency and only do 2%, then we do the special request over here and let them figure out where the money comes from. They may just come back and say, oh yeah, it's going to come out of your Ed Center, it's Environmental Special Plate Fund. You never know.
Right. Well, that's where it would have come. That's where we were kind of suggesting that it come from originally.
Yeah.
So I say like this meets Director Byerly's, comment of like have on the third item of request is like have them come up with the funding. It's like if they throw that at us, then that they came up with it. If not, we're back to the special plate request. So kind of meets all of our needs.
Okay. I understand what you guys are directing me to do is what I can say. You're directing me to put in 3 requests: your general fund with only the 2% increase, the environmental special plate fund at 140, and then a special request for the 145,812.
Right. To request for tribal districts and Ed Center.
Yep. No, just tribal districts.
Just tribal districts.
Just
Okay. Mr. Dunn, do you want to make an amendment to your original motion to include these numbers?
Well, so what does that come out to per district?
That's
Is that-
20,000 per district.
And including the Ed Center. So 15 and 5,
No,
Mm-mm.
20 and 5.
20 and 5. Okay. Okay. I'll make that motion
Sadie,
to,
did you have something?
I did have a comment. I don't know how this will roll to me just listening. We're already asking the totals on behalf of the tribe, and then we're adding them again at the end. Would that be questionable for the people that are approving our budget? I would think that we should just keep our 260, 600 and add the 2% of the 14,000 and continue with that, and then just see how that pans out better than using tribal districts who are already included. I don't know if, I don't want to get put back in a place where they're going to come back and say, well, I thought they were already included in the 800. I don't know if that would make kind of hinder what we're doing.
Well, the 800 is the amount that we need to cover all the districts.
Mhm.
But if with the amount that's being requested with just the 2% increase, there's not enough to pay all the districts. And so what we're saying we're short is 145,812. And so
Mhm.
that's the special request. You're not getting doubled. You're not getting
Okay.
doubled up. Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, did that answer your question, Sadie?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think we just need to say that because we're including the tribal districts, we want to make sure there's funding for everybody. And therefore the 145 is the additional money we need.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're doing. It's just that we're doing
Okay.
it with 3 requests instead of 2. I was Central Services was the one that was directing me or advising me and kind of working me through the system, and they're the ones saying do 2 requests, one from the general fund and one from the special plate fund, and then just explain in the general fund request, you're making a justification why it's more than the 2%. But what Director Briley is saying is as well, do 3 requests. One is general fund with just the 2%, one is a special plate fund, and then one is a special request on the side.
Okay.
So it's a different way of approaching it, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah, good advice.
Mhm.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Brierly.
Yeah, and I would just, thanks for that clarification, and I would just really lean in on that, the governor's motto is in Arizona for all, and that we're adding in those tribal districts, and that's what that special request is for, and why it's above and beyond the 2% increase.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've been writing a big justification statement about that. And so, and they're helping to do like model all this and helping edit and everything. I'm meeting with them for 4 hours tomorrow after meeting with you guys. And I met with them for 2 hours the day before and 4 hours a day on Friday. So we're getting there. But, and as you all know, I've told you before, I'm not a state employee, I've never done this before, and I'm taking my directions from you. And so that's what I kept telling them. And so I'm new to all this. And so you all are the ones with the experience in that. And so if you and Director Torres have, this is great insight. I think this is wonderful. So
Brett, do you have something, or do you want to second Bill's amended?
I was gonna second Bill's amended motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll move to vote on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Unanimously or all those against say nay. Unanimously passed. Okay, is there any discussion on the amended original motion? The amended original motion will include to make, instead of 2 items at the 900 and 140,000, we will make a motion to request 1 item out of the general fund of 754,188. Item 2 out of the special plate fund of 140,000, and then item 3, a special request of 145,812 would be the amended motion. Any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, move to the vote. All those in favor of passing the amended motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
All opposed, say nay. Pass. Okay, are you good with this, Deborah?
yes, sir. I understand what you're all telling me to do, and that's
Perfect.
all I needed. That
Okay,
was
so
what today was all about.
Okay, if you can write that up, make sure that that's clarified in the minutes. We'd greatly appreciate that.
Oh yeah, we will. We'll get it right. And then I can add the spreadsheet in as well as part of the minutes if you'd like.
yes, please.
Okay. And no, I appreciate you all working through this with me, because that's what I'm here for, is for you guys to direct me on how you want to request this money and how much. I was just giving you the recommendations of the Central Services folks, and it's good to be told from you all what to do. And now I can go back and tell them, this is what we're doing.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chair, one final
Ms.
comment if I
Brierly.
could.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just if then we're set up very nicely, if the governor's office won't put this all in her request, then it's easy to take whatever items aren't put in that request and then go to the legislature and say, hey, we didn't get this from the governor's budget. would you run this for us?
Right, yes, and that's what I was told about, special requests for projects, because like I mentioned, and it's for another agenda item in the future, which I was going to bring up, is that there are districts that want to work with their legislatures to make requests for projects just like the watershed one. And there's 5 across the state that I know of as it is. And then I know that we spoke to some legislators at our conference that came up to me afterwards and said, no, I want to work with you all to put in some requests for some, education funds and other types of funds for projects. And I said, great. And so I think that the question would, and so that's separate though from what I'm being told I have to do right now.
Okay. Next item, future dates. Do you have something in mind, Deborah?
Well, I know that you all are required to only meet once a quarter, and we could set a quarterly meeting for that. However, there's going to be a couple of things that are going to come up fairly quickly. And that is, once the funding issue from this year gets straightened out and you have access to all your funds, you're going to want to direct me to go and pay the districts and the ed centers their funding after all the issues are straightened out. So I think we're going to have to meet more frequently than we thought. And I don't know if we want to just set a date now, like 1 month out, so that, towards the end of September, just so that we have it on everyone's calendar already, so that you are prepared to find out what we can do in October to pay the districts, as well as discuss the special requests from legislatures, because conservation districts have asked me to put on the agenda for you all to talk about their requests that they want to make and requests that they would like the board to make with the legislature for like a statewide education project, things like that. So I don't know if that's better, or if you want to set a date in October and just wait until everything kind of gets pulled together and then maybe call for a special meeting in September. It's up to you all.
I like the idea of setting a meeting in October and then a special meeting in September. Because that way we catch it all. If something lags, we'll for sure be good in October. But if something comes up, we just throw a special meeting together.
Okay.
What is today? Tuesday? Tuesday.
Yes. It's the 26th, Tuesday, the 26th. Well, you're not going to want to wait too deep into October because the districts really need to get paid.
All right. Oh, yeah.
We could make the payment as you all already voted, and then make a second one later. But there's no problem with it. It's just that you spend more money doing that because you get a certain number of transactions for a certain rate out of central services. So there's no point in paying for more. But I understand what you're saying too, that
What if we had a meeting like Tuesday the 23rd in September?
Of what? September?
Of September.
that works for me. Don't know about the rest of the board.
That works for me.
Me too.
Works.
Okay.
Works for me too.
Mr. Torres, Mr. Brierly, you have says?
That's good for me.
Does not work
Okay.
for me, but you can go ahead.
Does not work. Okay. Does that week not work for you or that day?
A lot of that week, let me look back, and I would make it work, but I'm actually going to be backpacking Mount Hood with my son, so probably won't even have service.
Oh, you're on vacation. You're not. Okay.
Yeah,
What about the first week of October?
I'm going to be deep in cattle work that first week.
Mm.
Now the 7th of October. That's that next Tuesday. That could work.
Okay.
Anybody got a 7th of October?
Sounds good.
Yep, that'll work.
Good for me.
Okay. Mr. Torres,
I'm good, sir.
Mr. Brierly.
I think so. We're talking about the same time?
Yeah, 1. Should be quicker because ideally the whole financial committee discussion that we had shouldn't have been this long. So hopefully it'll be shorter, depending on what we got, but it should be shorter.
Well, it's not just that. You have a lot of regular meeting stuff that you need to attend to as well.
Okay.
That we put off because we were trying to make this one a short meeting.
Oh, so
But it's one of, it wasn't I just want to make sure that no one is saying that I was trying to say anything bad about the fact that the committee didn't meet. We just couldn't. It just didn't work out. And the real issue here is that this year everything was super fast for us, and
right.
There's nothing no one was at fault for any of this. It was just the first year, and the timing just made everything happen fast. So I really appreciate all of you working so hard on this and spending the time on it.
Okay. So we'll try to shoot for October 7th at 1.
I will note it for the record, sir.
Okay. Okay. Call to the public. Is there any public that signed in? Okay. Hearing none, we have completed all the things on our agenda, and we're going to adjourn the meeting at 3:04. Thank you, everybody, for coming on and getting on, and we'll look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Have a good day, everybody.